Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Forum Daily West. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh confirms that he will bring down the Trudeau government when Parliament resumes in the new year. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau shuffled his cabinet today. We have the details as to how many new ministers will be added. And the Alberta government's update on coal mining in the foothills of the Canadian Rockies upset former Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman. He will explain why. Thanks so much for joining us. At least 2 people were killed and several others were injured on Friday after a car drove into a crowd of people at a Christmas market in the East German town of Magdeburg. Police say it was a terrorist attack. German media say between 60 to 80 people may have been injured. Officials say a dark BMW drove straight into the crowd at the market, heading toward the town hall. Now, the driver of the car, a Saudi citizen, was arrested immediately after. Police say he rented the car shortly before the attack. Magdeburg, which is west of Berlin, is the state capital of Saxony-Anhalt and has around 240,000 residents. Germany is home to close to 3,000 Christmas markets, which are hosted throughout the country from the end of November until just after Christmas. Federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says his party will table a non-confidence motion to bring down the government. In a social media post, Singh says the New Democrats will bring down the Trudeau government in the next sitting of the House of Commons. Now, the House will not return, however, until January 27th, after they rose for the Christmas break on Tuesday. Singh's comments came about an hour before Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was set to shuffle his cabinet. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says Canadians need a change in government. He says the spending by the Trudeau Liberals is making life so unaffordable for so many. Poilievre says the worst part is the billions of tax dollars that are being spent are not even having much of an impact.
He spent $80 billion on housing affordability. Well, how'd that work? He doubled housing costs. He spent $60 million on his gun confiscation. 0 guns. He spent millions on a school food program that hasn't served a single solitary meal. So we should not judge a program based on how expensive we can make it. We should judge it by what it can do.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau shuffled his cabinet on Friday. There are 8 new ministers in cabinet, while 4 others will have different roles. Among the changes, Jeanette Petitpas-Taylor will assume the role of President of the Treasury Board. Anita Nand will give up the role, but will keep her Transport Minister portfolio. Stephen McKinnon will add Employment Minister to his role as Labour Minister. And Gary Anandusangari will add Northern Affairs to his existing role as Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre referred to the cabinet shuffle as a clown show. He says the Trudeau Liberals are only looking after themselves and not after the interests of Canadians.
And look at all the players in this drama. They're taking care of themselves, fighting for their own personal self-interest while they embarrass the country, tank our dollar, unleash crime and chaos in our community, threaten our trade relationship with our biggest partner.
Federal Health Minister Mark Holland says artificial intelligence tools may help link healthcare records for Canadians. Holland offered an example of how AI can be helpful.
Imagine if we have patient records that are digitized. You end up going in and you see a walk-in clinic for one problem, you go see your family doctor for another, you go see your dental hygienist for another problem, you go see your pharmacist for something else. When you have an interconnected data system, you can run AI against those visits and look for what each of them have in common with each other. So the problem when you go and you see your walk-in clinic, you may not know that you need to raise that you have this other symptom that you saw the pharmacist about, or that you went and talked to your family doctor about. So by having it in a digitized patient record where all of that is available, it's not just about you being able to see it, which is important. We can run AI against it to sort of go, okay, for this kind of condition, this kind of disease, here's what early indicators look like so we can catch it early.
You know, with 1 week into the GST holiday, retailers and restaurant owners say that they're on track for a sales boost, despite the struggles of implementing the tax break. Now, Retail Council of Canada Vice President of Federal Government Relations, Matt Poirier, says customers are shifting their spending patterns because items are no longer priced with GST. Restaurants Canada President and CEO Kelly Higginson says restaurant owners are breathing a sigh of relief as everything they sell qualifies for the break, excluding hard liquor. Retail sales rose 0.6% to $67.6 billion in October. They were led by increases in vehicle sales. Stats Canada says the automotive sector saw the largest increase in sales, including a 2.5% boost for sales at both new and used car dealers. Alberta Premier Daniel Smith announced a new compensation model for family doctors. Smith says the new formula will keep doctors here in our province while also attracting more physicians to Alberta. She says it will also help to alleviate pressures in other areas of our healthcare system. The new model provides after-hours care to take pressure off of emergency departments, enhancing team-based care, which would include nurse practitioners, pharmacists, and dietitians, and encourages physicians to grow the number of patients they care for to a minimum of 500.
And you can just understand the difference about why it's so important for us to incentivize patient panel growth and incentivize doctors to come back into this system if you take the opposite to the extreme. So if we incentivize smaller panels, because we were applying this model to 200 patient panels, we have 5 million or approaching 5 million people in Alberta. We'd need 25,000 doctors to make sure everyone had a family physician. On the other end, in the past, it was not unheard of that a doctor would have 1,000 patients. And if you had 1,000 patients per doctor, you'd only need 5,000 doctors.
The president of the Alberta Medical Association says the new model should help stabilize and sustain family practices and clinics. A doctor in Winnipeg has been suspended for 6 months after he admitted to billing for visits that didn't happen and rigging prescription renewals to pad his bottom line. The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Manitoba found that Dr. Daljit Singh Gill, an internal medicine physician, unethically and inappropriately submitted claims. The investigation found that Gill billed Manitoba Health more than $188,000 for communications with pharmacies, while most of his peers billed less than $10,000 in the same year. The college says Gill's actions were a betrayal of public trust. Police are investigating an apparent shooting at a Toronto Jewish school. The facility has been shot at overnight twice already this year, which saw a 17-year-old boy and a 20-year-old man arrested in connection to one of the shootings. Police say no injuries have been reported in the latest investigation. Richard Marceau is the Vice President of External Affairs for the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, and he says these shootings must end now.
Just this week, we saw a school in Toronto being shot at. We saw a synagogue in Montreal that was firebombed. And we're seeing levels of anti-Semitism that are unseen in generations. So it's time for politicians to stop tweeting and stop talking. It's time for law enforcement to apply the law and use all the tools in their toolbox. It's time for prosecutors to lay charges. It's time for people in the streets to be arrested for what they're doing, because while people say this is not our Canada, it has become our Canada, and that's not the way it should be.
The Toronto school shooting comes a day after a synagogue in Montreal was the target of an alleged firebomb attack for a second time in just over a year. Now, speaking of coal, the Alberta government offered an update on the future of coal mining in the foothills of the Alberta Rockies. Energy Minister Brian Jean says protecting our water will be the government's top priority. Many Albertans have shared concerns that selenium from the coal mining in the eastern slopes will make its way into our water supply. Jean says if coal mining will be allowed in our province, it will only be up to the highest standards.
New standards for coal mining will be among the best in the world and the best in Canada. We will be working with the AER to conduct targeted engagement with the coal industry stakeholders to start the Modernize Initiative. These sessions will allow industry to share their best practices that are in use in other jurisdictions right around the world, and to allow us to give industry a heads up on coming policy changes. Work will be done quickly, with the goal of having a new coal policy ready by this time next year. Our work may include amendments to the Coal Conservation Act, the Mines and Minerals Act, and other associated regulations, rules, and directives to achieve what we need to on the desired outcomes. Amendments will be focused on royalty rates, standards and techniques for coal mining, regulatory certainty for investors, and most of all, building confidence among Albertans that our air, land, water, and wildlife will not be sacrificed. Make sure we maintain the environment. We protect our waterways, protect our foothills. We've been very clear there's not going to be any more open pit mines in the foothills. That's a big statement. That's a big day for, I think, a lot of people in southern Alberta. We're going to do it right. What was happening before was wrong.
Lethbridge Polytechnic and the Lethbridge Police Service are celebrating their new police cadet training graduates. Friday's ceremony honored 18 total cadets, 13 for the Lethbridge Police Service, 3 for the Blood Tribe Police Service, and 2 for the CN Railway Police Service. The program lasted for about 24 weeks.
Anytime you inject new blood into anything, any organization, even your own body, it's a good thing. So these officers are young, they're eager, they just want to serve their community, and they've got the proper training, not just on the physical and techniques or whatever. A lot of our training also goes about humility, service, and what they can do for the community.
The former mayor of Lethbridge, who's now resident of the Beaver Mines area of Pincher Creek, also watched that media avail with Minister Brian Jean. Chris Spearman says he was quite concerned since the Grassy Mountain Coal Project, spearheaded by the Australian-owned company Northback Holdings, will still be allowed to move forward.
I was shocked that these regulations did not apply to Grassy Mountain. And then further on, there was some indication that, that to do that would be a violation of a contract. Now, who knows that there's a contract between Grassy Mountain and the Alberta government? What have they bound us to this time, which might have financial consequences for taxpayers? And are they so bound to it that we will be stuck with a mining project in the headwaters of the Old Man River, which will destroy economic development in agriculture that has been happening here for the last 70 years.
Spearman adds that Northback Holdings has avoided providing written responses to the concerns of those who live and do business in the region. It seems that every day and every year, food banks are becoming indispensable for so many families. What was once a temporary way to provide food in times of need has become important even for families who have jobs but are low income. BCN's Heidi Echevarria did some research in food insecurity and chatted with the executive director of the Interfaith Food Bank here in Lethbridge, Daniel McIntyre, to discuss how vital food banks are in today's society.
We have seen a huge increase in food insecurity in Canada. We actually are seeing 1 in 4 families are struggling to put enough food on the table, and that means that sometimes they are giving up, either the quantity or the quality of food that they're providing for their families. Here in Alberta, we've seen a 92% increase in food insecurity or people accessing food banks since 2019. And that is largely because of the COVID recovery. It hasn't been as great as we thought it would be. And then on top of that, we were faced with a lot of inflation, rising grocery costs, and this unprecedented demand is just kind of a double-edged sword for us, where it is more mouths to feed and less resources to make sure that support is there for them. So pre-pandemic, we were doing about 600 to 700 households a month. Now we're consistently doing closer to 1,000 households per month. We used to talk about 1,300 to 1,500 individuals monthly were being served out of our food bank here in Lethbridge, but now we're doing closer to 2,500.
Food security is when all people at all times have the access to get nutritious food that meets their daily needs. The main reasons that affect food security are climate change, wars, economy, and poverty factors. According to Statistics Canada, from 2015 till 2020, the poverty rate declined in all provinces. In Alberta, for example, the poverty fell 3.3 percentage points from 11.4 to 8.1%. However, the poverty is still here. For that, many food banks and other charities institutions fight together to ensure that low-income families have food on the table, especially during the Christmas season. The executive director at the Interfaith Food Bank, Daniel McIntyre, talks about the important work that the organization does in this regard.
We will try to connect people with other resources in the community to address those underlying issues. We also have empowerment programs such as our garden and kitchen programs that teach people how to cook a healthy meal on a limited budget. But ultimately, food insecurity is not going to be addressed until we actually have some policy decisions that are going to improve the circumstances at a systemic level. We need more affordable housing. We need to have fair wages for people who are trying to earn enough to put food on the table. The unfortunate circumstance is right now, people are not here because they don't have skills. They are here because they don't have money to buy their own food. And so that really is going to require a lot of investment on behalf of all levels of government. We are seeing a lot of people we shouldn't see. We are seeing 2 working people still not making enough to put food on the table. We're seeing people who thought they would be able to retire now not be able to afford their groceries because the fixed incomes are not enough. It is a circumstance where we can't put a face on who is a food bank user anymore. It could be anyone in your community. That includes your friends, your neighbors, schoolmates, people on your team, even your coworkers.
According to Food Banks Canada, visits to these charity places in March 2024 were more than 2 million, the highest number in history. This year's food bank usage represents a 90% increase compared to March 2019. Another important point that the institution mentioned is that 1/3 of food bank clients are children under the age of 18.
That's your Forum Daily West report. I'm Hal Roberts. Thanks so much for watching.